Brewing for Bozzos! Like to brew from those who haven't got a clue.
Welcome back to Brewing for Bozzos, the channel where we give you the basic understanding of how to brew a half-decent beer with basic knowledge and equipment. But first, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for all notifications, but give it a big thumbs up as that really helps the channel grow. Right, let's get into it. As stated in the last episode, today we'll be talking through our brewing process. So, for this recipe, you will need the following equipment: a mash tun, a fermenting barrel of 25 litres or 5 gallons, a large saucepan capable of holding about 20 litres, a smaller saucepan capable of 8 litres, weighing scales, a thermometer, a hydrometer, hop bags, Campden tablets, measuring jugs, a sieve, a colinder, and for the next part, which we'll discuss in the next episode, a siphon, a pressure barrel, and a fridge. Don't be too scared by the fridge. We got ours for 20 quid from Facebook Marketplace. It's big, it's bulky, but it does what we need. You will also need some sugar, but we'll get into that in the next episode. This equipment will also be detailed along with all the ingredients required in the video description. Alternatively, you can always contact us if you have any questions. In order to demonstrate the process we go through, we will need to actually have a recipe. For this, I will be experimenting by creating a milk porter with berries and cherries. I have not created a porter before, so prior to buying my ingredients I did a bit of research by looking up other recipes and looking at the different ingredients and percentages. And now, I proudly present Badger Berries, a dark ale with a white head to represent the badger and the addition of blackberries and cherries to symbolise his berries. The beer label I created says it all really. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. Here is the recipe. Malt. Pale malt 4.5 kilograms, chocolate malt 300 grams, crystal malt 200 grams, Carafa malt 150 grams, special B malt 200 grams, and flaked barley 250 grams. A quick breakdown of the malt. For ales, porters, stouts and bitters, the main source of sugar is pale malt. It has the highest sugar content and should be the base for all beverages. Since this is a porter, to add a dark coloration to the booze, I will be using chocolate and Carafa malts, which add an aroma and colour. I have then chosen crystal and special B malts, which will add a caramel colouring and flavour. And finally, for the grain section of the recipe, I will add flaked barley. This adds a grainy flavour and improves head retention, i.e. the froth on the top. Then we come to the hops. These will give me my bitterness, flavour and aroma. Hops. These are in total and they will be split during the boil. Bramling Cross 50 grams, Golding 35 grams. Bramling Cross adds a spicy and blackcurrant note, and Goldings provide a spicy, honey and earthy flavour. And finally, yeast. The glorious little critter that will snack happily on the sugars to give me alcohol. For this beer, I have bought Wyeast 1318 London Ale 3. By mistake. This should have been a 1968 ESB for strong ale, but it is apparently for a mild ale. With a large amount of sugar and addition of fruit, this should have been a stronger yeast, as we will now have a very sweet ale. Once again, apparently, I cannot read. This is up there with a glycerin toilet seat instead of a plain white one, a junior toolkit instead of a full-size one, and a pressure barrel for a gnome instead of a 5-gallon. But there we are, we're on this ride now, might as well enjoy the view. When my partner in crime / fiance sees this, I'll once again be laughed at relentlessly. Sugars. Since I obviously thought that this was going to be a strong beer, I wanted to sweeten it slightly. Idiot. And so I also bought 400 grams of lactose sugar. This is a non-fermentable sugar that sweetens the brew. Based on this, the amount of grain, the fruit, and the weak yeast, I'm half expecting this to taste like a mix of Ovaltine and Ribena Tuthkind. It'll be interesting at the very least. Fruit. For this, I have bought 4 packs of frozen blackberries and 3 tins of black cherries. I have also added 200 grams of plain white sugar and enough water to cover all of it, approximately 2 litres. So then we get into it. For the purposes of the video, I have not included the sterilising of the equipment, but that will be covered in a later video in detail. But for a description, I refer you back to the first video, episode 1. Number 1. The mash. First I weigh my grain and calculate the amount of water I require. Note, always tie your hair back to stop the elements of a dirty greying wig dropping in your brew. A hat is always preferable, or, like me, a bandana to stop stragglers. Not really, I'm just a plag who thinks it looks cool. Anyway, 5.6 kilograms of grain means 16.8 litres of water, say 17 litres, based on a 3:1 ratio. I then heat the water to 70 degrees Celsius. This is where you'll need a thermometer for the process, since this stage is highly dependent on the temperature. Apparently it's something to do with tannins. I don't pretend to know what that is, but monkey does what monkey's told. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. As the temperature is approaching 70, I pour all the grain into my mash tun. I then first make myself look really stupid by using a jug far too big for purpose to pour the water onto the grain before putting my sensible hat on and switching jugs. Give it a mix and then replace the lid for an hour. Number 2. The sparge. Once your grain is seeping, you will then need to heat a further 20 litres of water up to 80 degrees. Now, our cauldron only takes about 17 litres. In order to heat the full amount, we use a smaller cauldron for the rest of the water. Based on the quantity needed and the time scale, we can take a certain amount of water and boil it in the kettle to get it up to temperature in the time. Once the hour is up, we place the sterile fermenter below the mash tun and open the valve to drain off our wort. Using a jug again, the small one that is, we gently pour water over the grain to wash out any residual sugars that may still be in the grain. This should give you over 25 litres of sugar water or wort. Number 3. The boil. Now in the olden days, and in commercial brewing, they would boil the whole wort to sterilise the brew. We cannot do that as our pot only takes 17 litres. We reasoned that by taking a percentage of the brew, 10 litres to be exact, we could then create a more concentrate wort to add later. Bear with me on this one. So, we heat the 10 litres in a large pot until it is boiling. Our thermometer alerts us at the boiling point. But if you're using a standard thermometer, you will need to keep an eye on it. Timing is crucial during this stage. At the point of boiling, I will need to add my first batch of hops. This consists of 30 grams of Bramling and 15 grams of Golding. These will then boil for the longest period, creating a bitter flavour. Set your timer for 1 hour. When the alarm goes off, you will then need to add the second set of hops. 10 grams of Bramling and 10 grams of Goldings. Reset the alarm for 5 minutes. When the alarm goes off, add the 400 grams of lactose sugar. Reset the alarm for 10 minutes. When the alarm goes off, add the final batch of hops and remove the pan from the heat. It will then need to be cooled rapidly to reduce the haze. Don't ask me why this happens, I don't know. People cool the wort by many means, either by ice in buckets or with water coils. We place ours in the sink, block the plug and run cold water into the sink and let it flow down the overflow. Once the water's cooled down to 20 to 22 degrees Celsius, add it back to the main body of the beer. We filter the beer through a sieve to remove any hot particles that are pretty big, but to tell the truth, they'll drop into the sediment at the bottom when in the barrel anyway. 4. Check the reading. Using the hydrometer, fill the test tube with wort and place the hydrometer in and give it a quick spin to remove any bubbles that may be clinging on. Once the hydrometer has stopped spinning, it will give a reading. In our case, the wort sat just below the 40 mark. Since the hydrometer and tube were sterile, we poured the juice back into the fermenter. If these are not sterile, dispose of them, as they could poison your beer. 5. Campden tablets. Since we're unable to boil the whole wort to remove any unwanted bacteria, in order to sterilise the brew, we then drug it. Take a Campden tablet for every 5 litres of wort and crush it. Then pour the powder back in the drink with the imagery that you were Pablo Escobar. Now, all joking aside, you will need to wait a full 24 hours to be able to add your yeast, since Campden tablets will kill off all bacteria including yeast. After 24 hours, the wort will be safe to add the yeast back in. 6. Adding the yeast. As stated, I use wet yeast. Wet yeast comes in a packet and needs to be refrigerated. On the morning of brewing, take the packet out of the fridge, leave it on the countertop to reach room temperature. Now for the fun bit. Massage your packet to find the hidden packet inside. Reposition it at the bottom corner as gently as possible. Then give it a good old slap on the rump to pop the internal packet. This gets the yeast all excited and will cause the packet to expand over the next 3 to 5 hours. Sterilise the outside of the packet with an antibacterial wipe before tearing its closer. Before tearing the top of the packet and pouring it over the wort. Over the next few days, you will notice a strong smell of alcohol and malt, along with thick foam on top of the liquid. This is normal. The ale should ferment for a total of 7 days. If, however, the smell is more pungent and smells more like a gas leak or a sewerage farm, then there's a good chance that it may be infected and have gone bad. 7. Adding the fruit. The beer has now been fermenting for the past 3 days and upsetting your partner as she works. It is now time to add the fruit. So I add all my fruit and my sugar into a large saucepan and cover them with water. I have then let them boil for about an hour. Once the house has started to smell like Willy Wonka's sock drawer and the fruit has turned to pretty much mush, we then remove the saucepan from the heat and rapidly cooled it in the sink down to 20 degrees. Any hotter than this and there's a chance that it could kill off the yeast. From here, we poured the contents of the jug through both a colander and a sieve into the brew. Now remember to sterilise the sieve and colander that you're going to use. The last thing you want to do is poison your beer right now when it's halfway through its fermentation. We do this by pouring boiling water over both. We will then leave our beer to ferment for the next 4 days. For the next period, you will need additional equipment. You will need a siphon, a pressure barrel, or enough bottles to accommodate 5.5 gallons of beer. I will discuss carbonation in the next episode. Side note, from the fruit you also get enough pulp to make a couple of crumbles for your afters as well. Well, that's all for this episode. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions, or comment down below if there's an easier way of doing these things, because I'm damned if I can think of a way. Happy brewing, Bozzos.